Hey crew, welcome back to Whitebelt Mobility. We are going to work on one of the biggest, most active muscles that we have and that we use in the gym. That's the lat muscle, the big muscle that runs down from the armpit all the way to the bottom of the rib cage. And this muscle works super duper hard for us. Every time we pull-ups, ring rows, etc., it is working extremely hard, but it also works in things like deadlifting where it is really working on controlling that bar path. And so the lat is a massive muscle that we want to activate as much as we can. And sometimes it works really hard and can get sore. So this is a way that we can make this thing feel better. So you're going to need a foam roller today. Any foam roller will work. And I'm going to start by putting this in the armpit, so really up in the shoulder. And this doesn't feel a lot like lat right now, but that's going to get really interesting here in about a couple of minutes. So bear with me here. Now, what you'll see a lot of people do is they'll actually roll up and down, right? We don't find this, and this is from the Ready State. Kelly Starrett over at the Ready State. Their modality is to really work across the muscle tissue as opposed to with the muscle tissue. So what we want to do is roll front to back, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put it up in our armpit, and we're just going to roll side to side, right? And I'm going to try to get as much slow movement as you can. Full disclosure, we've been doing some Murph prepping here, so we're doing a lot of pull-ups, and my lats are really, really sore right now. Really, really sore. So I'm taking this nice and slow, making sure that I can actually take a deep breath. Now, if you find something that is really interesting, has your attention, here's you can drop in a contract and relax. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to go 4-second inhale, 4-second contraction, and 8-second exhale. So very slow, long exhale. So it's going to look like this. 4-second inhale, contract by pushing into the foam roller for 4, and then slow exhale for 8. The idea is on that 8-second exhale, that muscle just softens a little bit and allows you to get a little bit deeper experience in that foam roller. Now, let's move this down a little bit. We're only going to spend 2 or 3 minutes on each side, so we're going to work pretty quickly, but you could spend easily 10 minutes aside working on your lats. They're that big, they're that big of a muscle, and they do so much work that we could really be diligent, spend a lot of time making ourselves feel better on this lat. And this is really easy to do, layering this in to part of your day. You know, if you're watching, we've got a 7 and a 9-year-old. So if you're watching some Netflix show at the end of the night with your kiddos, you can easily lay on the floor and get a little bit of mobility action while you're having some family television time, right? So back and forth, make sure you're breathing. Good. We're going to move that a spot down. And this is in the meat of this lat muscle, this big sort of area of the lat. This is where things tend to get interesting for people. So I'm going to roll very nice and slow. And actually, I can get on sort of maybe a little bit of the serratus, which is on the front of the rib cage. Can even move a little bit of that. By the way, that serratus is really gruesome on a lot of people. I know it is for me. Maybe I'm telling on myself a little bit. That's okay. Full transparency. So just going nice and slow back and forth. One of the other things that the lat really works on is if you have tight lats, your overhead mobility tends to be a struggle. And that lat opening up, being able to lengthen, allows better overhead position. So the lat is a very fascinating piece of soft tissue because it obviously is a puller, right? It allows us to do pull-ups and that type of thing. But it also keeps barbell where it's supposed to go when we do things like deadlifting. It allows for better overhead position on things like pressing. Lats are very, very fascinating. Now, it's about 2 minutes. We only went from, call it the armpit to the middle of the lat. You could certainly take this down into your side. We're not. We're only going to work on the top half today. We can always go after the bottom half on another day. So I'm going to lay down, put this foam roller in the armpit here. Then I'm going to start my back and forth. Now, notice that on this side, again, this is my sort of worst side. And I know my lat is more stiff on this side. So what I'm doing is instead of being overhead, I'm going to put this in what looks more like a plank, right? A little bit more in front of me. And I can still work on side to side. And as I get access, I can move this arm over my head. I can sort of play with that position. So you have a little bit of freestyling here on how you want your arm to be positioned. And I think a lot of it has to do with what are we trying to work for, right? Are we working for an overhead position? Are we working on stiff tissues? Those things sort of drive the idea. But the point, you get a little bit of freestyle here. You can do whichever one you feel gives you the biggest bang for your buck. So we're going to pull this down a little bit. Now I'm going to move my hand over my head a little bit more. And now, nice and slow. Yeah. If you feel like you go over a speed bump, right, you get this little spot and you're like, oh, clink, goes over a speed bump. We're going to stop there and we're going to get a little contract and relax. So I'm going to get to that point, right on top of it, and we're going to contract and relax. So inhale for 4 seconds, contract for 4, and exhale for 8. Good. And all of a sudden I feel like I don't have the speed bump anymore. It's really interesting. It's really fascinating when you start doing some of this mobility stuff. You feel better. Then you're like, wow, this is really interesting how your body adapts to the stimulus that you're giving it. We're right in the meat now, big sort of dense part of that lat muscle. And, a little stiff. So interesting. I'm stiff in a little bit different place. I'm sore in a different place on my left side than I am on my right side, which is interesting. And this is pretty common. Typically when you're doing mobility from one side to the next, there's going to be sides that feel different, right? One side's going to feel better. One side's going to feel a little more stiff. One side you have access to, the other one you don't. That is pretty normal or common, I should say. And what we're trying to do is work towards making both feel the same, right? That's the idea. That's the idea. So you're breathing. Spend about 10 more seconds here. Try to work a little bit more overhead. Serratus. All right. Tapping out, gang. All right. So that is a strategy that you can use to make the big muscles in the back that do a lot of work for us daily, on the daily in the gym. It's a good way that you can just work on this, watch television at the end of the day, make yourself feel better, make your back feel better so you can come in and train tomorrow. We'll see you next time.